In this update, we're tracking two rather unusual events that's happening over the next 48 hours, and then a much bigger, more widespread setup coming in on Sunday, heading into Monday. So let's delve in the details and break down the overall setups. Here is the water vapor imagery, and we've got an area of disturbed weather that's kind of like parked right along the South Texas coast, and they're going to be just inundated with very heavy rainfall over the next 48 hours with this particular setup. But there's also another unique setup coming in from the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of dynamics coming in around lunch, getting into this afternoon time frame, and the Storm Prediction Center has in fact elevated this risk to an increased hatched risk for 2-inch diameter hail and a tornado setup. And within that window, after I think the 5 o'clock time frame, we've got to be on the lookout for spin up tornadoes across this region into the Pacific Northwest. In fact, there is that hatched risk that encompasses areas of Seattle all the way down into the Portland region, getting in all the way into the Eugene region. That hatched risk is implying the atmosphere is capable of seeing some of that 2-inch diameter hail at times. This is a fairly rare setup for the Pacific Northwest. I mean, we're talking Washington and Oregon getting the potential for huge hail. This isn't like the Southeast. And we have an upgraded tornado risk as well within that same region. So I do feel that there's going to be an outbreak of severe storms starting around the 5 o'clock time frame. Although it does look to appear kind of a shorter window, but there is that short window where we could see some spin up tornadoes and some larger hail associated with this activity, likely after the 5 o'clock time frame. And if you take a look at the latest high resolution guidance, yes, it's got thunderstorms, these supercell thunderstorms likely blowing up across this region within that, say, 5, 6, 7 o'clock time frame, and then kind of racing off to the northeast. So I do feel it is going to be a short window, but nonetheless, we could be looking at some quick spin up tornadoes and some larger hail with these supercells that will be moving in late this afternoon. And then, of course, further south into South Texas, we've got that really big rain event that's unfolding. And this area is in a serious drought down there in South Texas. And this is a really rare, unusual, moderate risk setup for South Texas. Oh man, they've been in a drought and now they're going to get crushed with very heavy rainfall, if not flooding rains. And that likely just continues in the same area even into Thursday, as it really doesn't move around that much. It kind of drifts off to the northeast and likely encompasses more of the areas along the southeast Texas coast, back up into the San Antonio region, does likely include some of the Houston Metroplex, but most of it's going to be really fine-tuned along South Texas. And that's why they have the flood watches in place. And even right now, they do have a slight risk for severe storms heading into Thursday. And from what I'm seeing, this could even be upgraded to an enhanced risk. This area is known for some larger hail even further south into South Texas because they've just been so hot lately. They've been well into the 90s up here, and even some record-breaking temperatures further south. So we'll be looking for that region. And then, of course, further north, we'll have like a little stalled boundary with this cool front that's going to be kind of sagging southward into your Thursday afternoon. But look at some of these impressive rainfall totals. This is very significant, and that's why we do have the flash flood watches in place, and it's likely a 2-day event that's getting started as right now as we speak. The flood watches are now in place, and we could be looking at multi-inch rains, even some serious flooding, and even some double-digit totals in isolated areas is probably not out of the question from this particular setup, just because it's very slow moving. But you can see most of it is elongated into central and especially there into South Texas. So if we expand the view for the rest of the country, yeah, of course, we got those two big setups, but further north, it's still trying to hang on to winter. And that's where we're going to see some of the snow flying coming out of Canada and really elongated along the Canadian border So we should start to see more snow start to come to fruition across Minnesota, northern Minnesota, the Great Lakes region, the Upper Peninsula. Of course, we've got the system coming in from the Pacific Northwest. That is going to be the beginning stages as this dives through the Rockies and sets up a fairly decent potent area of low pressure, likely forming within the Texas Panhandle down to a 996. That's going to be the beginning stages of providing that lift as it moves across to the northeast. I think further south, you'll have a little bit of stronger capping inversion again in Oklahoma and a good part of Texas. That'll be on the day on Saturday, while we're still trying to hang on to winter to the north. It's a fairly decent cold front up further north that's going to eventually sink a little bit further south and kind of bring, tap into some of that energy further south within the southeast. And by Sunday, it's a little bit different beast we're going to be working with, because we're going to have a lot of cape associated with these storms, and the dew points are going to be high. You're going to be prime again for, as that cap tries to erode off the dry line. We should start to see supercell thunderstorms heat up in the heat of the afternoon, and likely start eroding the cap, especially east of the I-35 corridor. We're heading into East Texas, and then I think this kind of blows up in the afternoon across Louisiana, back into Arkansas. This would likely extend all the way into Missouri, back into Illinois, as well as into Indiana, and you can see this pretty impressive expansion of that slight risk from the Storm Prediction Center they highlighted even 2 days ago, and this is continuing, and so they'll be continuing to fine-tune this particular setup. So they did back it up a little bit portions of Texas, because we do have a little bit stronger view of the cap that's going to most likely start to erode east of the I-35 corridor. So that's why we're having some severe storms for East Texas. But as you swing off further off to the east, and especially northeast back into the Tennessee Valley, it is all system go for all three modes of severe storms. Not like a crazy outbreak that we saw from the 14th to the 16th time frame, but nonetheless, definitely some tornadoes with this activity, and definitely some larger hail and extensive wind gusts across multi-states from this severe storms that's going to break across the Dixie Valley region into the Tennessee Valley, and likely extend all the way up into Illinois, Indiana. That does include all of Kentucky into Tennessee, and a good part of Ohio as well, and even West Virginia. So it's going to have a lot more moisture to tap into. These systems aren't going to be moving nearly as fast. Remember last week, or the 14th through 16th, where they were moving 40, 50, 60 miles an hour at times. This is kind of a different animal. They're only moving 15 to 20 miles an hour, sometimes at 30, but nonetheless not nearly as fast. So we should start to see more precipitation feeding into this activity, which would likely enhance the severe threat as well. But we're looking at some severe thunderstorms and tornadic activity extending into Arkansas, back into Louisiana, a good part of Mississippi, Tennessee, through Kentucky. That would likely be extended all the way into Ohio. So if you look at the upper level winds, again, it's not as impressive as the 14th through 16th time frame, but definitely enough of a notch that would create the lift mechanism to produce those supercell thunderstorms. And if you look at the low level jet as well, again, not as impressive as it was through the 14th and 16th time frame, but still we could still see probably a dozen tornadoes that might come out of this particular setup heading into Sunday. And this likely continues to push off to the east going into Monday. So this continues to push east. So you'll have the cold side of the system. So you got snow flying to the north across the northern tier of Minnesota, a good part of Wisconsin, back into portions of Michigan, and as well as Quebec. And then, of course, further south, we'll have the heavier rain and the stronger thunderstorms and the severe aspect of the system. And that continues to race across to the east as we flip the calendar and head to the last day of the March, headed into April 1st time frame. We'll be dealing with those severe storms all the way down to the deep south through New Orleans, all the way into the Florida Panhandle. Would include pretty much all of Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, even end up into Virginia, would likely even to the Delaware region on your Monday timeframe. And that continues. There's the system heading off into the East Coast. And of course, you got the cold side of the system that we'll be dealing with as well. And the backside still hanging on with the snow. Yes, as we flip the calendar into April, we're still talking about snow up there because we still got some colder air coming in from Canada. But again, not as nearly as intense winds that we saw just previously, but we're going into the windiest months. April is actually the windiest month out there. So we do expect a lot of winds associated with this system, and likely the first week of April is likely even going to be windier than what we're going to be seeing for the next 7 days. So do expect the winds to continue across a good part of the lower 48. And if we break down the precipitation, it kind of looks like this. Of course, it's active across the Pacific Northwest with that system coming in this afternoon. We got to be on high alert for that. But the heavier rains is alive and well, not just now, but also heading into that April 1st time frame with yet another system with high winds moving in. And then lighter amounts as you extend into the Intermountain West. Of course, the desert Southwest is begging for some heat relief, but they're unfortunately not going to get it. But so with the main setup, it likely misses out on the Texas Panhandle and much of Oklahoma and Kansas, much of the Central Plains, really. But of course, you got the flooding event that's going to unfold across South Texas, and then lighter amounts as you drift further north. And then you got the polar jet is alive and active. And with the slower movement of the storm, we do have some flooding concerns that's going to be inundated across the Tennessee Valley. That would include likely much of Kentucky, and also some heavier rains as too, mixed in with that polar jet across the Upper Peninsula through the Great Lakes, as well as into the Mid-Atlantic and getting into a good part of the Northeast as well. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch my next update while I protect you before and after the storm.